Okay, hi. What you're listening to is another of our informal presentations about different elements of the research program that's ongoing to develop the next generation of the Canadian Forest Fire Danger Rating System. This set of recorded presentations is focused on providing early information to those in the Canadian fire management community, so that they can be aware of changes that are coming and consider what this means for operational fire management and how you've been using different elements of the system. You'll see quickly, if not already, that this is not highly produced. A nice slick presentation here. What we've been doing is giving these presentations in webinar form to individual agencies across the country, in advance of discussions about what the changes mean. Our goal here of those presentations was to engage with you and just communicate what's going on prior to us creating final updated versions of these elements of the system. I just want to emphasize that while this recording is just a convenient way to reach a broader audience, we're happy to have these discussions, ongoing with individuals at agencies or individual agency groups that might want to talk about implications of updates to the system. So this is just an informal presentation. We'd be happy to have you reach out to any of us who are involved in the Canadian Forest Service Fire Danger Group, who is leading this research. You can reach out to us directly or through your CIFC science reps. We did last year in 2021 publish a general overview of the changes to the danger rating system. This is a really high-level document. It doesn't get into the details of what the changes will be in interpretation, implementation sides of things that are really important from an operational point of view. What this is us doing here is trying to communicate to you what we're thinking, what we're planning, and give you a chance to reach out and provide any comments that you might have. You can download this. It's freely available through our government publications site. It does provide a rationale. It provides a bit of history on the danger rating system, a rationale for why we are making some changes right now and what we're trying to achieve, but it is fairly high level. The system overall, the structure hasn't changed that much. We've made some things explicit. We've moved some things around. What I want to communicate here is that we are working to update all aspects of the system, really. We've been working on this for a while. This has been ongoing for more than a decade in the background. But we have accelerated this program recently with the target of trying to provide an updated generation of the system that will be available to you in some form by about 2025. Some of these pieces will be done earlier. Some of them will be done towards the end of that. But we want to keep you informed as time is rolling along here. We're thinking one of the pieces that will be done a little bit earlier, and that we've been talking with a few agencies about, is these changes to the FWI system. And so I'm going to talk in general here about the changes for those high-level users who might just want an overview. And then there'll be two other presentations recorded like this, one that focuses on the inputs to the FWI system and one that focuses on the outputs. I'm trying to keep these somewhat short so that particular users can pick and choose what they want to see. Just a reminder to everybody out there, the current FWI system is used throughout the country for day-to-day operational planning and providing that information about the fire environment. Uses the standard 1 p.m. daylight time observation of fire weather, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and the 24-hour accumulated rain. It tracks the day-to-day change in moisture in a few really critical layers of the forest floor, essentially. And the outputs, the fire behavior outputs, the relative fire behavior outputs represent the potential fire behavior at the period of peak burning, so late in the afternoon. The changes, so we are updating a few things in the system. Really, in terms of the danger rating system updates overall, probably the larger changes, and in terms of new models and new pieces and new structuring of the system will be around the fire behavior prediction system. The FWI system, we wanted to maintain, for the most part, unchanged in terms of its structure and its output, because it seems to be doing what operational fire management folks want it to do at a certain level, at that day-to-day regional planning level. We are changing a few things to try to create more consistency across the board here. We're changing from the reliance on that 1 p.m. weather observation, which has really been what we've used since the late 1930s, to essentially at a daily level to maximum and minimum values. Same weather inputs, temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, and rainfall. Although we'll be looking for a daily estimate of the max and min, so a daily forecast of the max and min values, or a daily observation at the end of the day of what the max and min values were. The outputs of the system are still going to be for that peak burn period. That we are adding some additional outputs. You can see them on the sides here, that address fuel complexes that are very different from the forest type that the core of the FWI system has always addressed. And we'll have another presentation on some of these pieces. The most obvious one is the grassland, which is more exposed and dries quicker and responds in different ways than a closed canopy forest. I'm not going to talk too much about those here today. I'm going to talk about some of the core pieces of the system and what these changes mean. As we work on all of the changes to the danger rating system, we spent a lot of time talking about what works, why do these things work, why does this or that element of the danger rating system work. A few of the high-level things we don't want to lose out of the FWI system, thinking about how you in the operational community are using it, and others throughout, even internationally, given that this is a system that is adopted in many different places. There's certain elements that have made the system successful, and we don't want to lose these, particularly from the Canadian fire management perspective. One, the simplicity in calculating the system and interpreting its outputs. Two, that at a baseline for the standard user, it's a daily calculation. That is, we want to maintain that, even though we want to switch to daily maximum and minimum temperature as the inputs for that daily calculation. However, in doing so, this gives us the option now to, in a very consistent and systematic way, use hourly weather if you have it available. That will be the Cadillac of that will be the Cadillac of data resolution that you can use here, because it captures the diurnal variation, either the observed or the expected diurnal variation. Underneath the hood, I'll talk about this in a minute. What we're doing with the maximum and minimums is stringing a diurnal structure through those values. And so the reason I say we can now be consistent is that the calculation will be always under the hood of the system. Maybe you don't want to know about it, but under the hood of the system, it will be an hourly calculation going on throughout the day. This has some real advantages and doesn't, for those who only want to see the daily outputs, doesn't affect them at all. The main outputs, as I say, are for peak burning. though, underneath the hood, there is this hourly calculation going on. And the last of these high level things we want to keep is we want to make sure that in the changes we were making, we didn't change the general relationship between the indices and the aspect of fire activity that you associate them with. So just as an example, that when in the old system, when the FFMC was 92, the new system will be giving you roughly that same FFMC, so that you have a sense of what the moisture is in those litter fuels and a sense of what that means in your region. Why are we making some of these changes? That this could be an entire presentation in itself. I'll go through these really quickly here. We're trying to reconcile some of the differences that exist between the daily calculation of the FFMC that is in the current FWI system, the hourly calculation of the FFMC that was a method developed by Van Wagner after the FWI system to address the obvious piece that needed to be addressed, that litter moisture changes throughout the day. So this 1977 hourly FFMC calculation has existed. There's also a diurnal adjustment to the FFMC, to the daily FFMC, that exists as well. These can be telling you different things at different times, and so they're, in a way, from a model building point of view, they're almost like three different things, even though we call them the FFMC, and we use them to estimate litter moisture, and that's what we think about. But they're each different pieces that can say very different things at different times. It's very easy to cherry pick weather patterns where each of them is well out of whack. So we are fixing this problem that's existed for years and really raised its head or came to the forefront when hourly weather was being used more, and growth modelers were trying to use hourly weather to drive FWI system in things like Prometheus and daily growth, to make daily growth projections. So that's one of them. We're also trying to account for day length a little bit more accurately, a little bit more accurately and a bit more consistently, so that changes, those long days one might experience at higher latitudes are reflected a little better. And so that's one piece as well. We want to more clearly define what peak burning really is, and creating an explicit diurnal structure of every day underneath the hood of the system will do this for us. We do want to provide internally consistent ways of keeping track of rainfalls, and so accounting for that, say, midday rainfall that doesn't quite fit the official timing of the 1 p.m. observation. And so that again is something that one can use in this new system and put, even if you are using max and min weather values, if it rains at 2:30 in the afternoon, you can associate that rain with that time and then look at the drying that happens to the fuels in the 4 or 5 hours of the day subsequent to that. So you will be able to do that all in a very simple way, but in a way that is consistent with how, say, the hourly calculation is working, or the daily calculation. We do want to improve the use and the consistency of spatial weather information as well. And we also wanted to be able to add some options for fuel complexes that behave very differently from the conifer standard. And here we're not thinking specifically about fire behavior, but we're thinking about how fuel moisture changes and very differently than the conifer, closed canopy conifer standard that is the core of the FWI system. And here, as I said before, what we're talking about is open grasslands on the very fast drying side of it, and peatlands on the slower moving side of it. The inputs, I've talked about this. I'll just throw them up here and we'll, the inputs are still going to be the same. And as a baseline user requirement, it's daily data of, maximum and minimum temperature, maximum and minimum relative humidity, maximum and minimum sustained wind speed and rainfall. There'll be various rainfall timing options. The standard rainfall, can still be used. Best case, you have, and a number of agencies have said, yeah, we have hourly data that we've been wanting to use for a while. Best case is you have hourly data, and so you don't need to rely on this approximation of the diurnal curve that the maximum and minimum temperature method will get us. You can use your hourly data directly, and it will be very consistent with a calculation that's done with, say, an estimate of what that diurnal structure was. Worst case, but still reasonable, we will provide you, if you only have the possibility or the inclination to take the 1 p.m. observation, we have done some analysis based on hourly data across the country and have some simple ways of estimating maximum and minimum values from that's standard noon observation. It's not the best case by any means. I listed here as the worst case. I mean, it's an estimate of the max and mins, which are then provide us a way to estimate the diurnal structure through the day. So there's multiple levels of estimation here, but it still will be, it will still provide a consistent method for doing the calculation that's consistent with, the middle of the road daily max and min case, but also consistent with the use of hourly data. The outputs, the core outputs are going to be the same. The core closed canopy conifer type that the FWI system has been structured to track, these are going to stay the same. They will still be providing outputs. The main output for the day will be conditions at peak burn. The method that we're using now should let us estimate when peak burn is happening a little bit better for those users who want to use that, instead of waving hands and saying, well, it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We all know that would change throughout the season when the days get longer, the days get shorter, weather patterns change. It could be that what's going on under the hood could be used to provide a better indication of when and what those conditions at peak burn are going to be. In terms of the use of the system, here's the current daily flow of here's my simplistic sort of characterization of what it seems most operational agencies are doing. You're doing some planning for the, early in the morning, you're making some weather observations. Your weather group is making weather forecasts for the day. You're doing some planning based on those forecasts of the 1300 weather, you're doing the FWI system calculation based on that forecasted 1 p.m. weather, and doing the planning for the day based on that at that point early in the morning before a morning briefing. That seems to be typical. At 1 p.m., the weather observations are happening, and what we call the actual FFMCs and DMCs outputs of the FWI system are being made at that point. Those are still representative conceptually of what's going to be happening at peak burn, but they're being made from the 1 p.m. weather. This is what's happening right now. This is just me recapping things so that you see the differences on my next slide here. Again, later in the afternoon, you may be also planning for tomorrow or the next few days using forecasted weather, tomorrow's forecasted weather at 1 p.m., calculating forecasted FWI values. You might be doing this several days out into the future at this point, just to look at what's on the horizon. With the new system, very little changes really. You still do your morning weather observation. Probably from that observation is when you finally update, because you have observed data now, you probably finally do your final moisture calculation for the day, your final FFMC, DMC, and DC calculation. This is all happening in an automated way behind the scenes these days anyways, but this bookkeeping system would, use the observed values of what yesterday was really like to say, here is where we ended up in terms of the moisture content of the forest fuels. The weather forecast would be a forecast of temperature, RH, wind speed, max and mins. And you would use that to calculate a forecasted FWI system. Same thing you're using, same way you're doing it now, exact same timing, you're just using a slightly different weather forecast. Moving forward from that, in the middle of the day, you might update, if weather is changing differently than the forecast, you might update your projections, you might update your FWI system calculations. Planning for tomorrow, again, is using the same forecasted weather for tomorrow, max and min values, calculating forecasted FWI system values. I've talked about this a few times, what's really happening behind the scenes. They're essentially, we are even with the standard daily max and min inputs, we are doing an hourly calculation. You don't need to know about it if you don't care about it. This is how we become consistent with the daily FFMC and the hourly FFMC and any sort of diurnal adjustment that exists as well. And to do this, we'll be using the hourly FFMC mostly as it exists right now. And we've created a simple hourly Duff moisture code and drought code model to run in the background. It's a bit absurd given how slowly those dry, but again, for consistency, that's something that we've done, and they're consistent with the current models. So the output, the daily output, which is going to be for peak burn, will probably be still around, taken from 5 p.m. essentially, but you will have access to, in your systems, you will have the hourly data underneath the hood, and you can look at it and perhaps flag changes where the weather system has changed, or you can account for rainfall if it happened, if it got missed, or if it happened at different times or came in different amounts. So you'll have all those options. I'll talk more about those in a more detailed talk about inputs. But what does this mean for agencies? These are pieces that have come up in discussions with the agencies when we've been doing these presentations live. So again, there are IT and technical issues working behind the scenes about weather collection, that sort of thing, which is highly automated these days. Planning, like I tried to show you, I don't think planning changes that much in terms of timing. Decision support systems, I think there are increased opportunities for systems running behind the scenes that can be looking at real-time weather as it comes in and seeing and identifying if there are any differences from what was forecast for the day. And there are obviously differences in, there'll be some need to update training and interpretive guides. I think the training and communication of the system at a basic level will be simpler, actually, because I think there's more physical logic to talking about, the diurnal change of weather through the day versus this 1 p.m., this magical 1 p.m. observation, which, there were lots of great reasons to use that. But I think we can update the system now and get a better, more accurate estimate of what's happening throughout the day with the max and min values, which are the standard starting point of a forecast, a weather forecast anyways. And I think there is an opportunity, this is a great opportunity to sit back and revisit the classifications, the adjective rating systems that folks are using for classifications. We've started that and have an example of that in Ontario right now, using the old system, but it was something Ontario wanted to revisit anyways. So so that has been done, and we're hoping we will provide some guidance moving forward around that for other agencies to think about their adjective rating classes and perhaps revisit those with the most recent couple decades of weather. So what's ongoing right now? We have a prototype calculation program developed for the new system. These are pieces that we wanted to get done early because the changes aren't massive. It's just this change in input structure has implications for you, the user, but it's not a massive change in how we're using the system, really. We're testing this with various data sets from across the country. Thanks to all of you folks in the agencies who have given us your hourly and daily data to test this out. Really, really helpful and helping us make sure that we're not making changes that are really causing things to be quite different. That's, again, one of our goals is to avoid that. And we're finalizing the FWI system as of, around when I'm recording this. There's some other stuff that's going on. We're looking at some of the, we're looking at whether the drying rates in the FFMC and the DMC are still stand up to the way they're being used now, and the weather we're seeing, or whether we should update those a little bit. This is way behind the scenes that most even advanced users would not care about. But that's something that we're going on and that we will be testing, do a lot of testing of that. I'll talk more about that in the outputs recording that I provide you. So hopefully this provided a bit of a whirlwind tour of the updates to the system that we are planning, and for the FWI system specifically. Like I say, there's lots going on overall in terms of the danger rating system. This FWI system is a piece that we think will be done sooner rather than later in the process, and that changes, apart from all the testing and making sure that we are not breaking things that have been working really well. We hope to have this documented, by say the end of 22, start of 2023, and out to those users who want to start to implement it and test it at that time.